I am Creatrix Tiara. I am a creative producer, performance artist, writer, and shenaniganist based in Melbourne, Australia, and I do a lot of work with the LGBT community, and I'm very honored to be the moderator for the Coming Out panel, presenting NeonFiona, Riley J. Dennis, Dutchie, AJ Clementine, and Eugene Lee Yang from the Try Guys. So I know usually we like panels about the gays. You know, people just like try to assign words to you, but if you could like describe your own identity, like in your own fabulous words, what would it be?
Hi, I'm NeonFiona, and I would just be a bi girl, she, her, cis, yeah.
I'm a lesbian, and I use she, her pronouns, and also happen to be transgender.
I'm Dutchie, and I'm a bisexual baddie, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi everyone, I'm AJ Clementine, and I'll just say I'm the friendly neighborhood trans girl. Hi.
Hello, I'm Eugene Lee Yang, and I am a gay man.
Yeah! Just about like every letter in the acronym, and then some. So this panel's about coming out, but I feel like when it comes to coming out, people think of it as a one-time thing. You know, like, yes, I made an event and now I'm out forever. But I'm curious to know like how it differs when you're like coming out, you know, to people you know versus, you know, your audience, and also whether there's a difference between like you're out because you make content about being queer from day one, so you're kind of like just out by default, versus having to make an announcement about it.
I'll just go.
Yeah, go for it.
For me, I started my channel when I was a young, naive gal who thought she was a heterosexual, which was not the case. And so I had to come out online, but like, sadly didn't think to capitalize on it properly. Just kind of started making videos and dropping it in. So I didn't get to have like the big coming out moment. But then it also differs because then people in your real life don't necessarily know, because just because your audience online know about it, your real life people might not. So it was definitely kind of like a process of like, I'll tell the internet I don't really care because it's just like a bunch of like queer people online and that's dope. But then having to go through that in person as well was like just a whole different ball game for me personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm very similar to Fiona on this with respect to that, because I actually came out to the internet before I came out to my family and friends. But yeah, it was much easier for me because I knew that the things that I was going through, other people were going through too. So by putting that out onto the internet, it was very, very different than coming out to people in real life. But it was good, very good.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to coming out, like it's more like the most scariest part of it is like coming out to yourself. Like it's just one of those things that just like once you own up to it and you just discover that's who you are, like it just starts getting easier from there, if that makes sense. Like I feel like for me, like just knowing that I was trans and then just like starting to understand that a bit more was like the scariest part at the beginning. But as soon as I like had more info and I saw like there was more like trans visibility and all that kind of stuff like that, it just got easier from there. But yeah, for me it was more so I came out online than I did to like people in my life, and I found it much more easier than coming out to myself and like realizing that.
Yeah, I mean, from all the answers you can see that everyone's journey is so unique and individual. I had a very interesting experience having been out as a gay man in my personal life, in my real life, and then when I happened to stumble into creating content online, I just never specified it in regards to proclaiming anything, and then people just sort of, you know, I was winking at the audience, but for me there were things with my family that I couldn't be as explicit as I wanted. And then I kind of realized that, you know, if for my own personal journey, I wanted to make it so that my parents couldn't just avoid the topic. Like we go have dinners and we just don't talk about it. You know, text messages, we don't talk about it. So for me, the statement of doing it online was sort of just showing that if 1 million people could believe me, then hopefully you can believe me. Ooh. So that was sort of the reasoning behind why I wanted to make more of a proclamation as opposed to letting everything just sort of be vague and you know, not being as explicit about exactly who or what I identify as.
Yeah, I think mine was probably similar to AJ in the aspect that like it was hardest for me to come out to myself, and then coming out to other people is just like, I mean, I know this about me now, so like I don't know, deal with it. but before that, it was harder to like stop being in denial about it and to be like, I think all of these things and like therefore I am this thing. It was hard to come to that, but then I was just kind of always out online because yeah, I didn't really talk about it at first. It was just like who I was and just became a part of my content as I kept talking about stuff because it was like on my mind a lot. But yeah, never had like that big coming out moment. And in real life now, it's just like coming out to people every day in different ways, either telling them I'm gay or trans or whatever. Just like it comes up at different moments, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a part of me, yeah.
Yeah, a few of you have talked about like the first coming out being really to yourself, and AJ, you and I have talked about like, you know, making YouTube while negotiating gender dysphoria, and you know, if any of you like had like a live reckoning of your identity in front of a pretty much an international audience, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, like, something so, like, personal and intimate, like, gender dysphoria is something that, like, is crazy to deal with, like, on your own. But then having other people watching in on the situation as well just adds that, like, other tension. And I feel like you just kind of start to learn and have little, like, things that you do to, like, look after yourself, which is what I kind of started to do. Like, if I didn't like videos from like a couple of years ago, then I'll just delete it. Like, it doesn't need to be there anymore. But yeah, it's just, and then also just being like honest and open, and like I feel so thankful that I can have a following where I can just like open up about this kind of stuff and they understand it. And I have trans people who follow me as well, and it's like relatable to them. But like that's just the reality of being trans and living as a trans person, is that you will have like dysphoria day to day. And yeah, and I want to be able to convey that honestly and truthfully through my content. So I think as long as I'm doing that, then I feel okay about it. It's whenever I'm trying to hide it and act like I don't have gender dysphoria and act like everything's okay, that's when I start to like cave and feel like I'm gonna like explode and go a bit crazy.
I mean, the internet is not a great place for trans people if you're having any sort of public questioning or doubt or anything like that, because it's very like definitive. Like you say that you are these things and you do these things, and everyone holds you to that, and no one's given room to really to like kind of explore themselves. And even especially for trans people, like there was a large chunk of when I was first out online where a lot of people didn't actually believe I was trans because they were like, you have to prove X, Y, and Z, and I was like, I don't fucking owe you anything. And I don't have to prove that. And I got really sick of it after a while. Because, I don't know, there's barriers that we expect trans people to like hop over to be considered actually trans instead of just being like, this is who I am. And that was a really tough part of it in the beginning until people started like accepting that. And I was like, whatever.
I think as well, like, obviously, token cis person here, so I'm not at all going to talk about that. I think within the LGBTQ plus community, and especially for a lot of trans people, there can be a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of, like, you need to reveal certain parts of your, like, life, you know, whether it's, like, you know, if you're bi, like, do you have a goddamn 50-50 split sort of thing, or if you're trans, it's like, so can you tell us about, like, your entire history with your doctor? Like, there's a lot of gatekeeping in that. It was really open up online from what I've seen, which is bullshit, but yeah.
I feel like that people would just like comment on anything that you do though, like no matter like who you are, like people would just like, there'll be someone out there that won't like something that you do, and it could just be something that's just like normal for you. But yeah, like what Fiona was saying, like no matter what you share, people feel like they're entitled to that information. Yeah. And like I documented my whole experience with gender reassignment surgery, and I tried to be as like informative as possible, but even that in itself like wasn't enough to some people. They were just like, no, you should have done this or you should have done that, and it's like it's your own experience.
Like, that's my
life.
Yeah, it's like your life, and you're like trying your best to like show as much as you could, but like it's like you're still just another person, just like anybody else. So it's like you're just gonna, yeah, just take it how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. All of you have talked about like authenticity and being yourself and hiding yourself. And there's been like a few discussions about like, oh, you know, people who are online, you know, they always present this very perfect image. We should see the imperfections more, but then at the same time, like, as you said, like, why is anyone entitled to that information? You know, if you don't know who's on the other side, like, you don't trust them. And also, like, people don't take the imperfections very well, and especially if you're still trying to figure out things about yourself or you're not sure about something, you can't really, it feels like at least, like you can't really just state that doubt, like everything you say as a public figure is a definite statement of proof. And if you don't do it perfectly and you have to be a role model, if you don't do it completely right, then you know, you are failing everyone. So I wonder if you had to negotiate that, especially those of you who had to like, you know, like Eugene having to make like this very amazing video, but like such a statement, you know, like was there like that kind of pressure, the internal negotiation of how much you give versus how much you hide, or whether it's hiding or just being private?
Yeah, I certainly think that anyone out here who is creating online, you're going to find that much of what you are giving the audience is steeped in your identity. In fact, your identity empowers the message you're trying to make and the audience that you're reaching. But that also comes with a fine line of like how much you will share. I mean, in the Try Guys, for example, Ned's wife was something that he just mentioned in an early video, and then of course the audience was like, who's his wife? And it became his thing, and he was the married guy, which I never understood because I didn't know kids were interested in married people. Apparently, it's a character trait. Nothing against marriage, child of divorce. But you know, yeah, people will latch onto something because they identify with it, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily need to identify with every single thing about your identity, because it's like, it should be like any conversation that you have on the street with someone that you meet. You should be entitled to showcase what you want from yourself, and hopefully if you know that it's the right message and in the right way, like in the music video I made, you should protect. I always say that there's like a little box, like a little concrete box you should have, particularly as an online creator, that you just put like very specific things in that you just decide you won't show on social media or in videos. I just think that's really healthy to know that there's a safe place internally. And I certainly have had a lot of that. And I think I'll continue, but I think that it's really up to you. It's very, very important not to feel like you're giving 1,000%, because then, you know, it's ruthless out there. It's really hard to do what everyone here does and what y'all do specifically for LGBTQ+ creators. Your skin is so nice. I've never sat this close to you. It's so pretty. Drop that routine.
I'm curious to know like how your queer or trans identity intersects with other parts of your identity, so like for race or disability or migration status or just gender in general, and how that changes. Like people, there's a topic of intersectionality of idea by Kimberly Crenshaw, and people just think intersections are like, oh, I have all these identities, but really it's about multiple oppressions. And so how do you negotiate all of that while also being in such the public eye?
I mean, obviously I'm gonna sit that one out. I'm just cis and white and bi.
Well,
Not that I'm targeting a particular person with this question or anything, but
yes, as a minority. Also, there's so many Asians in Australia. I didn't know it was so Asian.
there are many Gasians of chaos here.
Which makes so much sense. You're so close to Asia. But yeah, I walked around and I was like, everything that's not meat is an Asian restaurant. Which is great. I always say that I grew up in Texas, which parts of it are exactly as you probably imagine it. And so it was very difficult. And I had always joked that maybe around 4 is when I realized I was Asian. Like I didn't get it. And then I finally realized I was different because of how I looked. And culturally, of course, as well. And then on top of that, then I identified as gay, which was like, it is a very difficult thing to manage in terms of what racist ideology is placed on you and then intermixed with being LGBTQ. It's interesting because even within our community, there's a lot of negotiating happening with, you know, people trying to, like, I thought I would go to West Hollywood in LA when I went to college and I was gonna escape like all the racism of Texas. And then I went to Hollywood where it's just like the exact same thing, but just liberal, you know? It's like, oh, you have like really interesting stories. Tell me more about your Asianness and your childhood and how tortured you are. I
And then
love
like
kimchi.
the grinder profiles are like no rice, no curry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think it's really difficult, but I think the best thing to do is that you have to really marry the two first for yourself, because when you try to navigate both, like I certainly was guilty when I first came out of trying to be like, not like other Asian guys when I was attempting to date horrific, really bad stories. But, like you can't separate those two internally because people will smell it, they'll see it, they'll know that you are torn inside. And I think that you have to find pride in both and know that that's a singular, unique identity that you should make sure that you don't exclude either when you consider yourself as a whole person.
So, yeah, thank you. So Riley and Fiona, you both moved from internationally to Australia. Have you noticed a difference in how coming out or just queer community in general is like between the two countries? Or just as a migrant in general?
I think, well, my main one I would say, so I'm originally from Australia, but I lived in London for a while and lived in way too many countries. And I feel like through working in retail, that was like weirdly the main one that I noticed, because I worked in retail throughout like university and stuff. And it was such like coming out as specifically bi in Australia, like everyone would be like, wait, what? But you went on a date with a man that night and now you say that it was a woman? Like it was like this really like thing for them. Whereas overseas I found that it was like bi was more known, but it could just all be perceived differently. But I think like London and Australia both very, very similar cities culturally for that respect, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like some differences, but I feel like, yeah, my experience in the US and Australia has been very similar. Like there's good people and there's bad people, and I've had good experiences and bad experiences, and it's been relatively the same going between them.
Yeah. I think there has been like a lot of growth in both places though, like since I first came out, because apparently I'm like a dinosaur now, but like since I first came out through to now, like general cultural shifts have changed, and I think that is like, from my point of view, like in large part due to like online video creators, and just because people can go out there and be themselves online and anyone can see it, it's not as like, restricted as say television where you have to be cast into a role. Someone has to write your role. It's like, oh, you just get to like be your role and show that to the world, and that can help with like a positive shift.
Yeah, talking about like how people are much more open online. Like Dutchy, you have like this really funny series where you read gay memes. And it just sort of made me think about like how people nowadays are just so open and cavalier with talking about queer stuff in meme form, like where even a decade ago, people would be much more vicious if it's like anything vaguely, oh, no homo.
Yeah, I know. I think they're just a lot, like they're so relatable, and I think that's the best thing, and that's why people find them funny, and I'm honestly very honest with my subscribers. I don't really hold anything back, so I think that's the most important thing, to be transparent, but through memes, it can really help, I think, and yeah, help people relate, so at least I think so.
I love a meme.
I love that. You're like, I'm healing the world through memes.
Healing the world through memes, yes, the one takeaway from this panel. So we're going to open it up to questions. There's actually a hashtag, which I forgot to mention, which is VidCon AU coming out. But since I only just told you about this, if there's a way we have mics, if anyone wants to ask a question from the audience. Yes. Yeah, so the question is, how do you get your parents to respect your identity and not make assumptions about it?
I think that like just with anybody in general, because like a lot of people do, and I found a lot in Australia, like if you say you're bi, you're pan, if you're not monosexual, they're like, oh cool, you're this one. I'm just like, I can just be really, I'm so annoying and upfront about it. I'm just like, FYI, like I'm in a relationship with a girl, I'm not a lesbian, I'm bi. And I'm like, if I'm dating a guy, if I'm dating a non-binary person, if I'm dating whoever, I'm bi. That's my identity, and that's not reliant on who I'm dating. And so it's also obviously so much trickier when it's like your parents, and especially if you're like living with them and you want to have a great relationship with them, which is like totally fair. So it's like, it's just kind of being upfront about them and sitting them down and being like, look, I understand that this is how you perceive it, but this is my reality and this is like what's going on. So you can take it or leave it, but don't go around saying the wrong thing, because that's just literally not me. So you're just not describing the person I am.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of all about educating them, and I know that's hard because if parents are like in a mindset, yeah, a different generation, they have a different mindset and they may not know of all these like emerging sexualities and stuff because they weren't around when, or they may not have been around when they were growing up. And I think, yeah, it's just all about educating them as best you can and just telling them how you feel. When they call you that, tell them that that upsets you. Like, that's the best thing you can do, just be honest, and then, yeah.
And I think if, you know, I always like to think that your family or your close friends are also on a sort of coming out journey with you, and you have to consider that. Education surely comes with it, but for a lot of parents like mine, for instance, they needed to see it, or they needed to see the experience to learn as well as I was learning. So particularly if your parents are supportive, because some people will not go on that journey with you, and they shouldn't be in your life. Some will, and you just kind of have to, like my mom, when I came out as gay when I was like 18, she goes, oh, maybe you did not meet pretty enough girl. And then she kept saying that for 10 years. So,
and
but
now
then
you've
when
got 4 of them right here, and it's still not
well,
happening.
now she'd be
so
like,
that's proof in
oh,
itself.
why are you still gay? This is so beautiful. But you know, you just have to be patient sometimes and know that they'll figure it out with you. So one thing I wanted to tell my past self, because now I see that my parents are coming around, is I wish I wasn't as angry all the time with them, because I realized that sometimes I was misdirecting it to them because I was angry at the world for not understanding. And particularly identifying against pan is really difficult because it's something that conceptually a lot of people don't immediately get. So yeah, I would consciously advise patience, and hopefully they can understand as you do and as you grow and flourish.
Cool. All right, the Twitter questions are coming in. What's your favorite bit of being queer?
I mean, being queer, that's the good bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone go for it.
I mean, also, like, as, like, you know, cliche as it sounds, but also, like, the community. But it is such a big one. Like, you know, if I go to a party and there's just, like, a bunch of queer people there, and it's like, hey, we're the same, friends? Like,
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and, like, getting to have that sort of connection with a lot of different people. Like, I found myself, like, last year and this year at VidCon, I'm just, like, gravitating towards all the other queer people. We just hang out, but like it's just that shared understanding of like we've gone through something similar and we've had somewhat of a similar experience. Obviously the queer experience is so diverse, but you can kind of relate on that level, and everyone's just really cool and uplifting.
Yeah, I feel like there's just that hidden like appreciation, and we all just like know that we have like similar stories, or we can relate to things. Like I've created like this like Omegle kind of series on my channel, and I do like some Omegle videos, and whenever I come across someone who's like queer in the community, I'm always just like, oh, like by the way, I'm trans, and then we'll just have like a really cute conversation about like our stories, and like sometimes I won't put that in the video, but like people pick up on that, and they're always just like in the comments like, oh, that's so cute, like I love whenever you come out to someone who's gay or queer, because they're just always like just so happy, like they're just like the most like over the top, just like they're loving every moment.
Yeah, no, it's always really nice when you meet someone and it's like a woman and she mentions her wife, and I'm like, oh yeah, me too. And she's like, you can like see the tension leave her face, and she's like, oh, that's so nice. Like it's just so comforting to be around people like that. It's really great.
So this is kind of like two questions that are mashed up into one. So it's what's the best advice for someone who's coming out to people at the school or with friends, but they don't want to lose their friends or get judged, but also at what point do you decide to cut them off if they treat you poorly?
I mean, like, I'll cut fast. Like, I do think everyone will have, like, their own journey with it. Like, as Eugene was saying before, with, like, your family, it's going to be the same with friends. Sometimes they might not, like, know as much about it. They might not be in an environment where they've been brought up to be as comfortable. But I also think that there's always going to be a line, and you determine where that line is of, you know, when it's okay for your own mental health and for your own, you know, quality of life, because your friends should be there to uplift and support you and like help you have a great time on this earth. And so, you know, there's going to be a process with it, but if, you know, it's been a while and you've done your explaining and they're still not being respectful about it, which I think is the main thing it comes down to, then it's like,
Bye. There's a few people. Oh, sorry. You wanna? If anyone wants to jump in.
I mean, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends, you know? And I think
Yeah.
the big thing is, although it's hard, friendship is not something that's just a given, and you're not required to be someone's friend. It is something that you have to get good at, you know, choosing good friends. I certainly have chosen many, many bad friends through my life. And I just think as you get older, you'll just get more experience with understanding that you can surround yourself with a loving family outside of your own. And I think that's really important for every queer person to really understand. And that you'll find those people soon, one day, even if it's not now. And hopefully you can identify those people who are within your current group.
I just want to give a shout out to like the bunch of people on Twitter who are asking about being misgendered while non-binary and how to handle that. You know, as someone who is genderqueer myself and just starting in the past few months to go exclusively they, them, I feel you. And I think like if I could give anyone else who's also experienced this can feel free to chime in, but like I just guess, you know, find a time to like talk to them about it. If you have people who can support you and like, no, this person stay there, please use that correctly. And then from there build that could be pretty useful. It's something you just like also have to think. At least for me, I have to sometimes feel about like picking my battles. Like if I'm only meeting you for 1 second, like whatever. But it's someone I'm gonna know for a while. It's like, no, actually this is pretty important to me. Yeah, cool. Yeah. We've got like a couple of minutes, but I want to close off with, you know, if you could recommend any other like queer trans person who you think has done amazing work or has been an icon to you, or you know, even if it's like someone not a lot of people know that you think everyone in the audience should check out, who would you recommend?
Go listen to Kim Petras' music. She's an actual icon, and she's an amazing trans woman, and I just love her so much. So yeah, Kim Petras, everybody.
I was going to say Steph Sonyati. I think everyone here probably knows her, but she's incredible. Just trans woman, really smart, really great person. Yeah.
I like every single person I can think of ever has left my mind. Yeah.
I was going to say Shannon Beveridge. You guys probably all know her though. She's one of my faves and she really helped me with my coming out journey, so I'm sure she can help some of yours as well.
Oh, Stevie. Stevie Bobby does such great sex education stuff. She's incredible. Look up her stuff if you haven't already.
Kind of a tangential answer, but I think, and as I've met other queer creators at conventions like this, you know, I lived a lot of life before I was on YouTube, and I was always at the bars, and I was realizing that a lot of you growing up have this wonderful access to the internet, and you get to see a lot of people who are delivering messages and saying things that you should be hearing and that aren't necessarily immediately available to you. But I really encourage everyone, when you are of the right age, to like go to a gay bar or like go see a drag show, go into the community, because there are so many things that you can't learn until you're face to face with people from different walks of life in those settings. A drag show is like a really good place to start, just because there's going to be a lot of different types of people in that audience. And I just think it's really important for everyone, you know, because I, funny enough, I'm naturally an introvert, and so, you know, you can find that there is a sort of false sense of being out and about just by putting a camera on yourself, but it's not the same as going out. So if you can build up that courage and do that, I highly recommend that whenever you're 18. Is that in Australia? Wow, I should move here. 18? 17?
And there's like sort of
What?
events like there's a community organization here called -18, which is like for queer and trans youth, and they offer like things like like a big ball, and then like they've incorporated like drag artists in there. Like right now it's Melbourne Fringe, and there's like
Really?
a lot of events.
Is that happening right now?
Yeah, you're in the middle of Melbourne Fringe right now, so
I gotta
check
go to
out
a
some
bar right
stuff.
now to check
But
that
yeah,
out.
like there's like a lot of spaces where people of all ages can interact with
Oh, so
drag
when y'all go to
artists.
America, you're like, oh, it's like real puritanical with the bars and stuff. Like stuff closes at 2. Does stuff close at 2 here? This is not the panel for this.
I
It
mean,
closes
people
late,
do
3
get
or 4.
puritanical, but
It's like New
also.
York. Wow. I'm so shook.
Come back here in February for Midsummer, and it's basically like Fringe, but super gay.
Summer. Oh.
Midsummer, like, well, our summer is
Like
like
the
January,
movie
February.
Midsommar?
But yeah. Yeah.
Did anyone see Midsummer?
Nothing to do with the movie. Just
Okay.
like, this is more fun.
That movie is crazy, y'all. Anyway.
I was also going to say, off that topic again, back onto following people, sorry. I think an important one as well is, even if we're not recommending them, find people who like have the same identity as you and look like you, because for me, like when I was just like a young tiny baby bi and like not understanding that like I could be in a relationship with a woman, it was like just following a bunch of like lesbian couples on YouTube, and I was like, oh my god, I literally remember like this was a number of years ago, but I was like, oh my god, they have like a normal relationship, but it's two girls, and I'm like, yeah, because that's like what that is. Like you can have just like an actual healthy relationship, but like two women. I know, it's disgusting. No. But yeah, so it's just kind of like follow people who look like you. If they have the same skin color, have the same body shape, have the same identity, it can just help you to become way more comfortable with your own identity, because you're like, oh, here's someone who is just me and like out living their life and loving it, and it can just help you become more comfortable with it.
I mean, firstly, it turns out I have a bit more time than 2 minutes. I mean, working on queer time. If I could recommend one person, look up Mama Alto. She's this amazing queer, trans, yes, those of you who know Mama Alto, yes. She's amazing queer, trans, feminine, jazz cabaret artist who also does like 100 queer events around town. Is like a community leader. She's amazing, look her up. So just going back to the Twitter, because you have more time than I thought. How do you deal with being treated as a token amongst your friends? Or I guess, amongst people around you?
I have a friend that everywhere we go, he'll go, like if we go, for example, we went out to a bar last Saturday night and sat down with some new people that he knew and I didn't know, and he always seems to go, this girl's famous. And he always will call me a creator and stuff, and that's fine. But it's just hilarious for him to do that. But most of my other friends are very, like, they sort of just respect it and they just appreciate what I do and like back me, but aren't always talking about it. It's hard to talk to people that don't do the same thing, that aren't creators. But yeah, very supportive. It's good.
Tokenizing is interesting because I think in the end, it's very easy to flip it. It's where you center the authority, right? So if you're in a group, say, with 3 straight white men, and if they're always talking about you, you are in danger of being tokenized, as opposed to you talking about yourself. And I think that's where we often run into that. And it can happen innocently and it can happen maliciously. But I think that certainly once you speak with your own authority, whether you're even joking about your own stereotype, but you're owning it, that's where you are essentially eliminating this idea of tokenism, you know? Because I'm the gay Asian one in the group, and certainly am very gay and very Asian, but they can't say that.
And now there's 2 of us on this panel, oh my.
Yeah.
It's more than one.
But certainly you'll be in friends who won't feel the need to say that once you find the right group of people, you know? So, yeah. If you ever feel like a token, something's wrong.
Yeah. So some people have asked, how do they support someone who's come out to them? Treat them like a regular person.
Yeah,
Good
what
answer,
that is. Just treat them
Get
like a
up
regular
here, get on the
person.
panel. That's a good answer.
Yeah, literally just don't do the, I knew it. Like, shut up, no. Like, I don't care if you knew it. That's not your place to say you knew it. So yeah, just literally just be like, thank you for sharing that with me. Don't treat them any different. And don't try and make it like as little as you can, which can be different. Yeah, I was going to say, like, don't make it about you. If someone's coming out to you, just try and let them, talk it out. Be as nice as possible.
Just say that you're there for them if they ever need you, and just be, supportive.
Yeah, and actually be supportive. And
Yeah,
also, like,
actually be supportive.
if you're not already, which I mean, like, I don't think this is advice that this audience needs, but actually, like, be an ally. Like, if you hear people saying stuff behind their back, if you're in school and someone just came out, and don't be like, oh, that's great, like, thank you for telling me to their face, and then if other people are, talking shit behind their back, actually stand up for them and do what you can to be like, no, like, don't do that, because it's not that great when someone's kind to your face, but then, like, shitty behind your back. Queer cupcakes,
Bake
yes.
them queer cupcakes. Yes, do that too.
And yeah, so go on.
Oh no, I was just also going to say, like, if they've come out as some kind of trans or non-binary identity, I would ask them what kind of pronouns they want to be using now, and also what kind of pronouns they want to use around other people. Because like, if they've just come out to you and not like their family or public or whatever, it could be a different thing that they want you to say in public, so you're not like accidentally outing them. So just have a little conversation about that, see what feels comfortable for them and what works best for them. And also let oh, sorry, I keep pausing too much. You can let them know that there's room for them to like try out a new name or something. That you're a comfortable space for that to happen with, because it can be kind of awkward to ask. But if you're like, hey, if you want me to try out a different name for you for a couple weeks, see how it is, that would probably help them feel a lot more comfortable than just having to like initiate it themselves. Yeah. Fiona's really good at that. Ally number one.
Get your own hype person.
Yeah.
Sort of almost on the flip side of that, has anyone been homophobic towards you and then said, I have a friend who's gay, so I'm not homophobic?
I mean, yeah.
I think I scare them too much to do that. I feel like they wouldn't even try and think that, because I'd be like, oh, you know a gay person? Oh, that's so good. I know more than you, like objectively, and you're being a dick. Like, so yeah, I haven't dealt with that because I think they know not to do that around me.
No, I've never been in that situation. I don't think, I've been in lots of situations where someone was homophobic when I was young, but I don't know, I feel like now, I mean, to be perfectly frank, I think, ooh, I'm getting real specific. We have a very large umbrella, so many letters and identities. That's really important because we want to understand each other. But even within the queer community, there is a lot of misgendering. There's a lot of, particularly from gay men. I think that is really important for us to check each other in the community. I'm constantly checking some of my friends because trans identity and non-binary, these are all things that are still at far higher risk for a lot of people, particularly those of color and in more rural communities. And I think that we have to stand up for one another, and we as gay people or queer people can't get away with just saying things passively and then just saying, but I'm gay, so everything's okay for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something I would encourage, like, incisively, when you hear a gay friend say something, particularly with non-binary or trans people involved, I think it's good to know that we all can be educated, because I certainly was educated so much more over the past 10 years about all the different identities once I really was comfortable with my own.
And you just mentioned about rural communities, and one person asked about whether it's become easier, at least different, for people who live in rural or remote areas to come out.
Maybe with creators like this, like the internet, I think has helped people, certainly, because it's very hard when you're in like a town like I grew up in, when the only people who were out could not control staying closeted, you know, in the school. So I think that now it's easier in terms of seeing people like you online and more people slowly in media and entertainment, but I don't think that the journey is necessarily easier for those at home with certain families, yeah.
I feel like it's getting better everywhere in general, and you know, to that logic, it is getting better in more rural and regional communities, but it's still going to be tougher than it is in, like, you know, more progressive areas. But like, I do see a trend of it getting better, so fingers crossed it's all dandy soon.
I was talking to a kid, and she said that the coolest kids in her school were the gay kids.
What?
Yeah.
How do I go to that school?
I know. I was like, what? Yeah, I know. I was really born in the wrong generation because I'm Korean too, and this whole K-pop thing.
Yeah, right.
Because when I was a kid, I was like a little gay Korean kid, and they're like, oh, you're so not cool, you're so ugly. Blah. Anyway, that's awesome though. I love that.
Yeah.
I do think, though, on that topic, for those of you who didn't hear, you know, people can think there's like a trend towards, you know, acting bi to be more popular and get that clout. But yeah, I'm young, I'm hip. But I think as well, there can, like as we were talking about before, there can be a lot of gatekeeping around that. Yeah. And so even if like you doubt someone's, you know, intentions or what their real sexuality or gender is. I personally don't see any point in calling that sort of thing out, because I'm like, they could very well be going through their own journey of discovering their sexuality. And I know when I was in high school, bi didn't even exist as a word, but if you made out with girls at parties, you were like doing it for attention. And then like hindsight, no, Fiona, you're very fucking gay. So like, I think, you know, it can kind of get a bit irksome if you do think that people are doing certain things, you know, for attention, but it's also really important to give everybody that space to explore their own identity without, you know, coming for them, because it definitely feels annoying, but it doesn't really help anyone if we're acting gatekeeping and thinking that people need to be doing this and that to be a certain identity, in my opinion.
And just quickly on that rule topic though, it's actually interesting you say that, Eugene, because when I was growing up, and like even in year 11 and 12, I'm from a rural town called Bendigo. I don't know if any of you know. And when I was coming out and like coming to terms with everything, I did not know one other bisexual girl, and certainly not boy. And I was actually chatting to one of my friends the other day who's a year younger than me, and she is now seeing a girl who still lives in Bendigo, and she's like, everyone's gay. Everyone, like, literally everyone is gay, and I knew no one that was gay. So there you go.
I've got to visit Bendigo again.
Yeah, better go back.
Cool, so now we genuinely only have a couple of minutes to get back on Not Queer Time. Any parting words? Oh, so someone asked, can you do the whoa, but I don't know who they're pointing that at to.
No.
God, we're so old.
Any parting thoughts for the last 2 minutes of this panel?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Just be kind. That's my parting word is, no. I think if you go forward with everything with kindness, it's going to be a lot easier. And not just niceness, but actually being genuinely kind. It'll help you be a better ally to any identities that you're not part of. It'll help you navigate everything with a lot more ease.
Love yourself.
Simple.
Adding on to what Fiona says, like also like take care of yourself. I feel like you're kinder to others when you're also like appreciating yourself and your own like energy and your own time and your own space, and then you can let people in, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it's just also adding on what Megan said, like you can't really like love anybody else unless you love yourself first. It also goes with like loving other people's company. If you're not so like fond of your own company, then like that vibe is gonna like be like out there. So yeah, so like take time for yourself, take care of yourself.
I guess I'll leave with a charming little anecdote. My mom and dad were always like not very open about talking about me being gay, and the proclamation I made opened up a whole new avenue for them to be able to talk about it. So on their own path, of course, my mom recently texted my older sister because she's not comfortable yet doing it for me, and her text said, "Did you know L in LGBT is lesbian?" My sister said, "Yeah, everyone knows that." And my mom goes, "Eugene, not lesbian. Eugene the gay." So you know, like, I don't know, everyone on their own time. I'm 33 and it's taken it that long for my mom to get to that point, but love is love, right? And L is lesbian.
Yeah. Riley, any parting words?
I really, this whole time, thought it was lettuce. My parting words are be gay. And if you weren't already when you walked in here, you are now. Sorry.
All right, give it up for NeonFiona, Riley J. Dennis, Dachi, AJ Clementine, and Eugene Lee Yang.